Hello, everyone. Welcome. Looks like we have people coming in. Welcome. Hello. Happy Friday. Hello. Okay. All right. We still have people coming in. Okay. All right. Hello. Welcome. Welcome. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Overworked and Overwhelmed Tools for Effectively Managing Time and Energy in a Busy Law Practice today. So, thank you all for being here. We are expecting a wonderful turnout, and my name is Rianne, and I am a reference librarian here at the San Diego Law Library. And we have the honor of having Meg Moore as our speaker today. So before we get started, I'd like to go over a few bits of housekeeping. First thing, this is a CLE presentation, and for those watching live today, you will get a certificate of attendance from the law library by email once we verify who actually attended today. And if you were attending today's session via audio and you dialed in with a phone number, please send us an email with your name, phone number, and bar number in order to receive credit. Again, you'll only need to email us your name, phone number, and bar number if you dialed in today and joined via audio. You should have received the handout for this presentation, and if you did not, please email the reference desk at info@sdlawlibrary.org. And if you are watching the recording of this video on YouTube, unfortunately, we do not provide a certificate, but you can access the self-study log on the State Bar's website, and there is a link in the description box below. Okay, so back to those of you who are watching live today, this is an interactive session, and you can ask questions in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Under the Q&A function, you can ask questions anonymously or with your name, whichever you feel more comfortable with. And finally, at the end of the session, you will see a link for the survey. So if you can, please just take a moment, fill it out. We greatly appreciate your feedback. Well, that's all I have, and I'm going to turn things over to Meg.
Thank you so much, Rianne. Hello, everyone. Thank you for spending some time. If you're here with us on the West Coast at what is likely your lunch hour, so I am just happy to and love to present with the San Diego Law Library. I know I've had a long working relationship with them through volunteer work I did through the County Bar Association, and it's just a real treat to get to be here, particularly at this time of year when there's so much going on for attorneys and in our law practices. So before we dive into overworked and overwhelmed tools for managing your time and energy in a busy law practice, I want to tell you a little bit about myself. And at the end, I'll share some ways you can get in touch with me if that's something you'd like to do, if you want to do a little more work on managing your time and energy. One thing I'll say housekeeping wise is my other screen is over here. So you might see me looking that way a couple of times so that I'm making sure I'm clicking, and you should now see all about me. So I guess I'm on your screen twice, once in my photo and once with my face. My name is Megan Moore. I go by Meg professionally, and I am a coach and a consultant. I work with high achieving attorneys and leadership teams to help them identify and achieve what matters most to them. And so many of the clients that I work with, part of their challenges in career development, whether it's getting ready to retire, getting a promotion, making partner, maybe making a pivot in the area of law they're practicing. So many of my clients have a well-being aspect to what they want support on, because we are needing to manage our time and energy and all of the commitments we may have as hardworking and high achieving attorneys. You can read more about me in your handout, but I've been practicing law since 2008 and running my coaching and consulting business, Megan Moore Inc., since 2021. And it is a pleasure to get to support attorneys in this way, because so much of the work we can do can be so deadline driven and time required and adversarial in nature. And it's really lovely to get to work with people and to help them feel better and do better, be more productive, feel more relaxed. I mean, who could ask for more? So let's talk a little bit about today's outcomes and what my intention is for you to receive today. Um, if this is also your intention of what you'd like to receive today, but you have a question, as Rianne mentioned, you can drop it into the Q&A. I will do my best to answer all questions. And as I'm presenting today, there may be a few times where I'm asking you questions. So just taking a moment, using this hour, maybe you're also eating your lunch, but you know what? Shut down your email, put your phone on silent, turn it upside down so you can't see it, and just spend the next 55 minutes giving yourself an opportunity to take a breath and to be mindful of managing your time and energy because it's so important. And today, I would like you to leave with a deeper, or maybe a new understanding of what it means to manage time and energy, and why I'm saying time and energy and not just managing our time. I am going to give you some tools. One is a tool about prioritizing what's most important to us, or most important to you. How do we prioritize those big important things first so that we can make time for all of the other intricacies of our legal practices? We're going to talk about empowered language and how our brain, the way we talk in our brain or what we say out loud, impacts our energy. And when we are more focused on choice, we can start to feel a little more empowered and a little bit lighter of a load. I'll also give you a tool for eliminating some distractions, because as we know, when we have a busy practice, we're often getting pulled in lots of different directions, and not just even within our practice, but also by family members. Maybe we have volunteer commitments. Maybe my husband just did his ends of court presentation, right? So we have lots of things that are happening. Um, and I want you today to commit to using one practice so that you can feel more energetic, so that you can decrease your stress. And both of those things will help you manage your time. And to me, just feel a little bit lighter. It's also important, to me, particularly at this time of the year, whether you celebrate one of the many holidays that happens at this time of the year, we're all impacted by that. There's a sort of more of a hustle and bustle. There's more travel. If you are celebrating, you might be traveling or welcoming people into your home or having to split time amongst many commitments. For many of you, you may have a billable hour requirement or want to reach a particular goal if you're a solo practitioner by December 31st. So there's also that added layer of work pressure that can happen for us. So I am happy to be here, and my intention is to help you lighten your load. All right, so we are here for a CLE. Let's talk about what it is the California legislature has said we have approval to do this as a CLE. This is my third workshop this morning, so I'm taking a little sip of water to take care of my voice. We are here today. Well, I'm here to support you, but what's great is we now get CLE credit for attending this workshop and presentation, because well-being falls within the competency requirement. And so what this means, what competency means under our California rules of professional conduct, it's basically, in essence, being able to carry out the duties that are required of you and the obligations that are required of you to practice law. And the great news is, a couple of years ago, well-being was added to this requirement so that you do need to get 2 credit hours of competency education, but you can also have one of those hours, which is this hour, focusing on your own attorney wellness. And I just think that's great, because if we look at what wellness means, why would we have this as part of our competency requirement? When we aren't well, when we're not getting enough rest, when we're not taking care of our physical health or our mental health, when we might turn to other things, when we're not well, that can have adverse consequences on our practices. But before we even get into that, let's just talk about what wellness means. This particular definition is from the National Wellness Institute, and I love it because it's a holistic approach. You're not just taking care of yourself when you're at work or when you're doing the work of an attorney. Wellness is about an active process so that you can become aware of and make choices toward a successful existence. And work is one aspect of our existence, and that's one reason we're here today. So, think about what wellness means to you. Um, I could probably do 10 different presentations on wellness, right? One of it might be on a self-care. How do we take care of our physical and mental health? We could do one on what we're putting into our bodies, how to eat in a way that helps support energy versus deplete energy, right? I know when we get busy, for me, sometimes when I'm really busy, it'll be later in the day and I'll be like, oh, I never ate my lunch and I'm exhausted. And, that popular term, hangry, definitely happens to me. Or we might turn to whatever is quick and easy. So we could do a whole presentation on this. What I would like to land with you through today's workshop is that your wellness is not just about one thing, it is about your existence. And whether it's improving your sleep or creating some space in your home life so that your work life goes a little more smoothly, whether it's taking the temperature down a little bit in your work life so that when you come home, you're a more pleasant person to be around amongst your family, your partner, your spouse, your friends, your roommates, all of those things. So I look at wellness as a holistic thing. And I hope today, and I trust that you will leave with something that helps you improve your existence. All right. So, what are some of the challenges of being an attorney? Well, when we're looking at the slide in front of us right now, I'm sure that many of you have experienced being the person on the phone, either not raising your voice, but wanting to raise your voice. Maybe you've been on the receiving end of that, potentially from one of your own partners or colleagues. It might be from opposing counsel. We can just get stressed out, want to put our heads down. Maybe we need help. I know one of the challenges that attorneys often face is feeling like asking for help is a weakness. We're not supposed to. Also, maybe not knowing what our resources actually are. And for me, this is what happens by the time that I'm, you know, um, reaching out for help, then it's almost like it's too late, right? Like, oh, oh, shoot, I should have delegated this a while ago. And what happens for us is we get into that pattern of, oh, it's just easier if I do it myself. And then things pile up. So we're going to talk about sort of how do we operate in a different quadrant so that we're not doing that. And knowing what our resources are and who we can ask for help is part of that. Unfortunately, in our practice in particular, in our profession in particular, the way that we practice law, the way that we've been encouraged to practice law can lead to things like alcoholism, drug abuse, unhealthy practices like binge eating. I already mentioned not eating at all. We can lose sleep. And in fact, this fella is losing not only loses sleep, but maybe we're on our electronic devices late at night. We might be having restless sleep. So all of these things are challenges that some of us might be facing them all at the same time. Hopefully, we're not leading into an abuse situation when it comes to alcohol or drugs, but that's what happens when things pile up. And we also have a very high suicide rate amongst attorneys. So, those are some of the challenges, gosh, that we can face on the daily or the monthly. And again, particularly when it's a busier time of year. And depending on your practice, there might be, I practice education law. So, sometimes it was nice at this time of the year we slowed down a little bit because the schools I represented were closed. But that's not true for everyone. If you're a tax attorney or dealing with businesses and corporations, it might be that that tax season is particularly busy for you. So just knowing the ebbs and flows of our own practices so that maybe we can sort of troubleshoot some of these challenges before they arise. But what's the big deal? So our practices are busy, our lives are busy. Well, so what's the big deal? Why does it matter when it comes to competency? Well, when we don't take care of ourselves, when we let stress build up, when we've taken on too much and have said yes to too many things or have not delegated out, it can lead to mistakes in work products or in communications, like putting the wrong deadline in something or communicating something the wrong date to opposing counsel. Sometimes we miss our deadlines. When we are overworked and overwhelmed, it can create conflict within our work or outside of it with our family and friends. It can lead to compliance issues, right? Whether it's our basic compliance requirements as attorneys to, zealously advocate on behalf of our clients and file timely with the court, or whether you're in a compliance heavy industry or practice it could lead to other things where you've dropped the ball on something for yourself or a client. Unfortunately, it can lead to performance improvement programs or other performance improvement requirements for where you're working, or you can just feel overwhelmed and burned out. Oh, and then we look like these two miserable stick people with our hands in the air and our frowny faces. So as we move through today's workshop, I want you to be thinking about, okay, what are the things I see in myself? Because our problems aren't all the same. We experience overwhelm or burnout for different reasons. Something that might drive me crazy in my law practice, someone else might be like, oh, that doesn't even bother me at all. So I want you to be mindful as you're thinking about, sort of what your challenges are and what the consequences are in your life. You can individualize this for yourself, even though I'm talking more broadly about my experience, both my personal experience in practicing law, my personal experience with other attorneys, and then the work I do now when I'm coaching and consulting with really high achieving professionals who are trying to manage so much. Let's start with a question. You are one person. Spoiler alert, you're one person. Where are you burdening yourself by setting expectations that you just cannot meet? I think this can come up in a few different ways. Where are you burdening yourself? And I want you to take a moment as I'm sharing to think about, oh, yeah, where might I be setting unrealistic expectations? The first thing that comes to my mind is a more external expectation. And I do this now, even in my coaching consulting practice. You give yourself a deadline with a client. Oh, I'll get back to you by tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and you're like, why did I tell them I don't have now I don't have time. And now I'm stressed out because I feel like I have to reply to this now or I'm not meeting my agreement. Or even worse, the client pings you a week later and saying, I thought you were going to get back to me, right? So one way that we can be mindful is just noticing when we're creating the deadline or the expectation. Take a pause before you're telling your colleagues or your clients by when you will get them something. And we're going to talk about urgency in a little bit. And I know that sometimes what's hard is it feels really urgent to our client or maybe the colleague you're working with. Maybe it's a partner that you're working with or someone supervising you. And how do we manage that when it doesn't seem urgent? I mean, we know all the time we get a question from a client like that who says, I have to have this answer today. And you look at the question and you're like, no, you don't. So, what are the ways we might communicate that such that we can decrease some of that urgency on ourselves as well? In addition, many attorneys are high achievers, and we believe we've got to be perfect. I already mentioned we believe we're not supposed to ask for help. We believe we have to have all the answers. Even when we know from a legal perspective, you need to do your research, right? You can't just be chat GPTing everything. So, where are we setting expectations on ourselves? That's more of that internal, what are the beliefs we have around how perfect we're supposed to be? And as you become familiar, you start to notice that, you can ask yourself, why do I feel that way? And lots of times we have beliefs that we have to be like that. And yet then we'll see someone else who's a master delegator or who asks for help. And we think, oh, that's great that they were able to ask for help. How can I bring more of that into my practice and into my life so that I'm not the one in charge of everything? And unfortunately, that is so. Let's jump into some of the tools that I want to offer you today that you can start implementing literally today, as we say now. But I do mean that you can start implementing them today. And the first tool I want to give you is making time for important things. If you've heard me present before on well-being, you've heard me talk a lot about the big rocks, and we're going to get to that on the next screen. But something that you can learn, and for those of you that have read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey talks about this and where we want to operate most of the time in our lives versus where we actually usually operate. And I love this visual, and it's something that you can actually use when you're identifying um, what's something that's urgent and important, what's something that is urgent and not important, what's something that's not urgent but is important, and then what's the non-urgent, not important stuff. And how do we categorize those things in our own lives? So as attorneys, Unfortunately, we're regularly operating in urgent and important, but we're operating in a way that is even more stressful because we weren't addressing those things before they were urgent. What do I mean by that? I'm just going to use an example I think that will apply to most people here. Either a deadline of, for example, you said you're going to get the contract or the estate plan to your client by a certain time, or you might have a filing deadline, right? Those are two common deadlines: client set deadline or something involving the court. And I'll just use a filing deadline. So let's say that deadline, we're in December 12th now. Let's say you have a deadline to get that estate plan, that contract, that brief filed by January 31st. Right now, getting that brief filed and working on that estate plan, it's important, but it's not urgent. And sometimes, if you're the person that does that, when it's important but not urgent, we don't do it. We wait until we're in this other quadrant, urgent and important, right? So when it's urgent and important, that's, for example, the day or the days leading up to when that estate plan, that contract, or that filing deadline, those days is when that task is urgent and important. The more we've operated, so I'm going to call urgent important quadrant one, not urgent but important quadrant two. The more we can operate in the sweet spot of not urgent but important, the easier it is to manage when it becomes urgent and important. So the filing deadline is here. The due date for the estate plan is here. If we've been operating and building up to that, then when it's urgent and important, it can help us decrease our stress and feel a little calmer because we've been operating in that other sweet spot. And I'm going to give you a tool to do that in just a second, but let's stay focused on these four quadrants for just another moment. Urgent but not important. This is what I was just referring to, other people's urgencies. And as attorneys, I mean, this happens to me regularly, and also as a coach and a consultant, that someone will say, I have to get this answer from you today. And then you look at it and you're like, no, you actually don't. There's no adverse consequences versus something that's urgent and important. A client reaches out to you. I've just received an injunction, right? Like those are things that are urgent and important and unexpected. But sometimes others' perceptions of what is important are really not important to us. It's other people's deadlines. And when you've set one thing you can do so that when that urgent but not important arises, I get it. Your clients are important to you. When your boss or the partner at your firm or the executive director at your legal organization says they need something, it's not always easy to say, really? Do you really need it today? Even though we might be thinking that. So one strategy you can use so that when the urgent but not important comes up is building those relationships so that you can potentially have a more candid discussion. And it might be with a partner at your firm saying, hey, I saw that you needed this today. It can be helpful to sort of educate, like, I'm also working on X, Y, and Z. I know the deadline for this is next Friday. Do what's important about getting it to you today? Or is it possible that I could get this to you earlier next week instead? Right? And the same thing with clients. Hey, I saw your email. I got your text message. I'm not going to be able to answer that today. From what I'm looking at, it seems like you'll be able to reply to your client or manage this next week. Would it be okay if I got back to you on Monday? And look, the answer is going to be what it's going to be. I'm not saying this is a magic wand and suddenly everyone you work with and all of your clients will be like, yes, take all the time you need. That may not happen, but building relationships so that we can make the ask. Lots of times clients will say, oh, yeah, or they've labeled it urgent and they're like, oh yeah, but by urgent, I just meant by next week. I didn't mean today. And you're like, oh, then why'd you put, high importance urgent in the subject line? Then not urgent, not important. Gosh, what goes in there? Well, I don't have my phone with me because I set it down behind me. Things that are not urgent and not important might be things like reading the news, jumping on your favorite social media platform. Mine happens to be Instagram. Yours might be TikTok or Facebook or X or something else or LinkedIn. I know I loved it in one of my workshops. Someone said they love to get on Redfin, look at, or whatever the housing apps are. They're not interested in buying a house. They don't want to buy a house, but that's sort of their like guilty pleasure. Why is that not urgent and not important? Well, the subject matter, reading the news, you don't need to, if you don't do it, nothing harmful is going to happen to you or anyone else. However, often those things are the way that we take a break, that we decompress. And unfortunately, with the way social media wires our brains, that's when we get into doom scrolling. So not urgent, not important. And we're going to talk about eliminating distractions later and using some timers or some ways to plan for those not urgent, not important things, but actually incorporate them in. If I like to look at Instagram and it helps me relax, it makes me laugh, it makes me think about things, great. Then I can have some time. I'm going to give myself time to do that. But when I'm in not urgent, not important, all of the time, suddenly the things that are important are not getting done. So, how do we stay, and what I've left up on the screen here for a while, in this sweet spot of not urgent, but it's important? How do we dwell in this sweet spot? And this is where the strategy of put your big rocks in first comes from. Again, if at any point you have a question as I'm presenting, do feel free to drop something into the Q&A if you would like to. How do you dwell on the sweet spot? So you can sort of see from the picture here that the reason we say put your big rocks in first is if you do all of the little things, answering all of your emails, checking your social media, filing maybe papers that are on your desk, you're doing all of those little things, or the tasks of you're stopping and having that conversation with someone who bops by your office or chats you and whatever Slack, Teams, Zoom, whatever you're using electronically. When you're doing all of that first and you haven't already built in time to work on that estate plan, to work on that contract, to work on the brief that the filing deadline is due, you can see what happens is those big rocks don't fit in. So we're not managing our time. And you know what else happens when we do that? When we're doing all of the little things, it feels a lot heavier. Like that jar just looks uncomfortable. Ugh, nothing fits. It's like wearing, too tight a pants. Like, oh, this doesn't feel good. I'm exhausted. So the strategy to help you operate as much as possible in that important but not urgent is put your big rocks in first. I personally use my calendar for this, and I use my Outlook calendar. Um, but for me, it's sort of like a scheduling thing, but it's also identifying what's really important to you. Some of the easier stuff are our work deadlines, right? That what's important is I want to get this brief filed on time, and then you build backwards, right? The deadline is on January 31st. I know that at least 5 days before that, I want to have the rough draft to my assistant to do whatever they need to do, or to the client if they need to review it, to the partner if he or she needs to review it before it goes out to the client. So we build backwards. So, okay, I know I'm going to send the rough draft on January 25th then. That means I'm going to work on this for 1 hour each week between now and then. And I'm going to put that on my calendar. That's a big rock. What are some other big rocks in your life? I want you to think about this. And in fact, if you have the materials, you can print them out and you can actually answer them and write them down right now. What are your big rocks? And I want you to be thoughtful about that, because it's not just your work deadlines. Your big rocks also might be things like medical appointments, getting your teeth cleaned, going to the gym. If you participate in organized religion, going to wherever you go to for that, maybe there's also meetings. Perhaps you're on a board or you volunteer somewhere, and those things are really important to you. Those all constitute big rocks. Spending time with your family, your partners, your friends, those are big rocks. And I don't mean you've got to schedule your entire life and be like, Wednesday shall be my day with friends, and Tuesday shall be my day to participate in my church group. However, if you're aware of what's really important to you, and that's what I was saying, think about what your big rocks are. You can account for them. And I know for many people, for example, for folks who go to the gym a lot, I do try to work out, I do it at home. But if you go to the gym, you have to build in time for that. And what I notice with a lot of people is that sometimes the first things to go when we get busy are things like taking care of our health. We might cancel appointments. We might skip our therapy, skip our coaching session, skip the gym. So getting that on your calendar. If you are volunteering or you're on a board, you know when those board meetings are, get them on your calendar or whatever tool you utilize. Put those big rocks in And then you can also account for some of the small rocks that happen on the daily. What I hear most from attorneys is the chat function or emails are the sort of the daily small rocks that come up for them. And we're going to talk about how to eliminate some distractions for that. I don't operate that well on a really rigid schedule. Like from 10 to 10:30, I check emails. From 10:30 to 11, I take a break. From 11 to 12, I work on the brief. I don't necessarily, that for me, I don't operate very well on that, but it does help me to have a little reminder. Or if we have like our watches or our rings that tell us get up and move around, if that's a big rock, making sure that we're utilizing the tools around us so that we access that big rock, whatever it might be. When I go to the dentist every year, or I go twice a year, and it's really important to me because many years back I didn't go for an embarrassing amount of time. And then I had like 4 cavities and it was so painful. And I had to go every 4 months. It was like the walk of shame to the hygienist's office. It's really important to me to not do that again. So and dentists are usually pretty good about this, eye doctors as well. You schedule the appointment right then for your next visit and I put it right on my calendar. I don't ask, like they can send the reminder, but I do it right on my phone. Use those electronic devices. You can get it right on your phone right then. And then those big rocks are already set so that when someone says, can you meet this day? You can look and say, no, actually, I can't. I also want to encourage you to think about what are some of the big rocks that as you're sitting here, you're like, oh yeah, like family time. Or like I said, if you volunteer or you belong to organized or you participate in organized religion, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, I do that every Saturday or I do that every Sunday. Oh, every Wednesday is the study group I go to. We don't even really think of that as a big rock, but if it's important to us, we automatically do it. And think about, okay, what can I learn from that big rock that I could apply that might help support me, not just putting the breakdown of the brief or the contract or the estate plan onto my calendar, but actually sticking to it, right? So that first strategy is doing more to dwell in the sweet spot so that it's not urgent. I'm not losing a tooth or I'm not having a health crisis because I didn't take care of other things, but I am building backwards and putting those big rocks in first so that I can operate more in that sweet spot. So I do want you to take a moment right now and look, I'm talking to attorneys. I know you've got your legal pads and your pens, or for those of you who are more modern, your tablets that you're writing on right now. As we're talking, identify 3 or 4 big rocks that you know you can add in whatever way is helpful for you, whether it's you stick a reminder on the edge of your computer or you put it into your calendar. I know some folks love to have the handwritten planners. Get those big rocks in, but just start by identifying what are some of the things that are really important to you. Might be career related, might be personally related, might be part of your outside of work responsibilities or obligations. And then just take a second and think about, okay, how will I plan for what's important to me? Because that's going to help you avoid setting expectations you cannot meet. When the client says, I want it by tomorrow, you can look and say, oh, actually, I have a mediation tomorrow and then I'm going right to the doctor. So I'm not going to have time to follow up with the client by then. So I can give an honest answer. But when you do this and you get into the habit of putting those big rocks in, you do start to build around them and you start to realize, oh, I can actually say no sometimes. Or I have established a relationship where the partner I'm working with, my colleague or my client, does actually say, oh, sure, by tomorrow. It doesn't need to be by tomorrow. Why don't you get it to me I'm thinking Monday because we're on a Friday right now, or get it to me next week. So that's what you'll start to see. And when you're doing that and really prioritizing what's important to you, self-care can be another thing. For example, I am actually getting a massage this afternoon. I put that on my calendar months ago. Some other things have arisen, and I'm like, you know what? Even though I've got something else I'm doing later tonight, I'm going to keep that massage on my calendar because that's one thing I do every 2 to 4 months that helps me decrease stress and just feel better. And it's important because when I feel better, then I can work better. I can be more present with people. Identify your big rocks and think about and then take action on how you will plan for what's important to you. Let's move in. Okay, so we've talked about where are you burdening yourself by setting expectations that are not realistic or that you cannot meet. The next question is, why are you doing that? And not a nasty, like, why are you doing that? It's stupid. but really, why? Why are you setting expectations? And I think about this a lot when we expect a lot of ourselves. Why is that? Why are we telling the client and not, why are we not asking for help from our administrative assistant, or perhaps you work with someone else? And I know for the solo practitioners, why have I not hired a vendor or using someone else that can support me? Why am I telling myself I have to do it all on my own? Why am I telling myself I have to be perfect? What's happening for me? And lots of times it's because we feel like we have to. There is no other choice. So, solution number two in managing your time and energy is to embrace your choices. And if you've heard me present on this before, you then you know what I'm about to say. And if you haven't, this might feel wrong at first. We are always at choice, and we are always choosing, even when it doesn't feel like we're making a choice. Oftentimes, what happens for us is we get focused on the circumstances around us. I know that if I said, raise your hand right now, if you've ever said, I wish I had more time or I don't have enough time, I suspect every single person, all 79 participants that are here in the room today, are raising their hands right now. Yep, I have said I don't have enough time. Yes, thank you. Yeah, look, you can, I didn't realize you could raise your virtual hands. You can raise your virtual hands. Thank you, Chelsea. Right? I don't have enough time. How often are we focused on the external circumstances like other people? Well, I have to get home and pick my kids up from school. I have to get up and make breakfast or make dinner. I have to do these things. Events. I have to go to my end of court meeting. I have to show up for court. I have to file this brief on time. Those are the circumstances. And when we're operating, I have to work. If I don't work, I don't pay my bills. I don't support my family. I don't support myself. I live in San Diego. It's expensive. I've got a you know what ton of law school debt that I'm paying off. So I have to do these things. And when we're in that sort of have to, or they make me, gosh, it takes your energy away, and it's a downer, man. You feel so disempowered when everything in your life is have to. I can't think of what movie it is, but there's a movie where the character says, everything in my life is have to. Gosh, that's a really hard place to operate from. And I want you to notice your language. When are you using that language? I have to, I don't have a choice. I can't. I absolutely can't do it that way because no one's going to help me, or I don't have support. Oh, they always do this to me. They always make me bill more in the month when I'm sick. Or, oh, the client always demands so much of me and I have to get back from them. If I had more time, I would. I would do all of these other things. Spoiler alert, time is a construct in which we operate, and it's the same for everyone. And I know it drives me nuts when I'm in the room with that person who's like, oh no, every day I get up and I do my workout and then I get to work and then I go pick up my kids and I make lunch. There's part of me that I'm like, forget you. I might say a different word, right? Forget you. That's how I don't even believe that you're doing all of those things. But for human beings that operate more in choice, what that can lead to is actually like, oh, this is how I'm going to structure my day because I am choosing. What do I mean by that? So, again, notice how you're talking to yourself or saying things out loud. We do it a lot when we complain or we vent. We're talking about, oh, I have to, I didn't have a choice. I want you to identify the choices you're actually making and why you are making them. And here's what I like to say, especially to attorneys and judges. You actually don't have to file that brief on time. You don't have to get back to your client on time. How do I know this? Because plenty of people don't do it. I'm sure you've been in the courtroom or been working with other counsel who don't do it. It's the consequence of not doing it that matters to most of us, right? I have to get back to my client or they're going to fire me. I have to file on time with the court. Otherwise, I'm going to get fired at my job. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get sanctions. I'm going to get a malpractice suit. So rather than stay in, I have to, start to shift to, I choose to because. I file, and I want you to think about this right now. If you're the person's like, well, I have no choice but to file the document on time or to reply to my client when they ask me to, Not why is that because you shouldn't do it that way, but why for you is that important to you? I file court documents on time because it's important to me to advocate zealously for my client. And if I don't file it on time, it's going to impact them. I file court documents on time because I work for a law firm that if I don't do that, I'm going to lose my job. I file documents on time because my ethics matter to me and I don't want to get sanctioned or get a malpractice suit or get in trouble with the state bar. That is why I choose to file on time. I leave work early or take a break to go pick my kids up from school. Not I have to, I choose to because I want to be there for them. I want to take some time out of my day to be present with my family. It's my turn this week. I'm co-parenting with someone else and it's my day to do it. And I want to honor that agreement. So that's why I'm choosing to do it. Look, y'all, I know you might be sitting there going, but I do have to do those things. And you really don't. That's my perspective. That's my worldview. You don't. But I do know it's really important to you to do it. And what I have learned through my own personal experience of making these shifts, as well as watching clients go through this, when you focus on why you are choosing to do something, it does start to help you feel a little bit more empowered. Why am I working so hard? Because I want to pay off my law school debt, because I want to live in San Diego and it's expensive to live here, because I'm high achieving and I want to make partners someday. I want to own my own law firm. I want to be the very best family law attorney, estate planning attorney, litigator, government service, plaintiff's attorney, whatever it is. I want to be the best. That's why I'm doing these things. That's why I'm setting high expectations. Oh, and now that I'm saying that, I'm seeing if I choose to say, I will get back to you next week instead of tomorrow, I'm not being less high achieving. I'm setting myself up for success. So my client sees me as the best fill in the blank attorney, right? So again, let's look at where we can use our language, the language of choice. I chose, I choose, I can. Oh, I learned. I contributed to the situation in this way. I come back to that one. I need more information before I move forward. I've definitely said to clients, sure, I'll get back to you by tomorrow. And then I read the email more carefully and I'm like, well, I can't reply to you because I need more information. Right. And so looking at that and how we are choosing. Hang on just one second. Sorry, I realized I'm on the wrong language of choice. There it is. I'm just looking at there's a comment in another way to change the narrative is to frame it differently by using the phrase I get to. I choose to do this so I get to, or, oh, I get to spend time with my kids today. I get to show opposing counsel that I've got the winning argument, right? Whatever it might be. So thank you, Doreen, for sharing that. And then I am going to ask Rianne if you can mark that one as answered. Thank you. And if anyone else has thoughts or suggestions, please feel free to drop them into the Q&A. I sometimes struggle with I get to like, oh, I get to, clean the toilet. And to Doreen's point, though, it's like I'm choosing to do this because I don't want to have it. We've all been to the house or the place where we're like, oh, that's not acceptable to me, right? I choose it because I want to live in, I want to have a clean bathroom. So I get to, or I choose to. I contributed. I want to spend just a moment here. When we're feeling really frustrated by the people around us, it might be a spouse or a partner or a roommate. It might be someone, our direct reports who are reporting to me. It might be our legal assistant. It might be someone who's supervising you or the superior at your organization or firm. What happens lots of times is we get into complaint mode of like, oh, my my spouse or my partner or my roommate never helps me with anything. They never do it. I'm just complaining, complaining, complaining. Or this partner always asks me at the last minute. A question we can ask that comes from a little bit more of a place of choice and empowerment is, what are the ways I am contributing to this situation? And lots of times it's we don't hold our own boundaries, or maybe you're like, look, if you're in any relationship, whether it's work or personal, I think we often believe we have communicated very clearly. We have been very succinct and we have said exactly what we need. but it's not landing with the person who we need it to land with. So making sure that you are thinking, okay, how did I contribute to this? Sometimes the way I've contributed is I haven't communicated clearly um, that I don't want to work past 6 o'clock. Um, and 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 how much time we're spending at work as newer and younger people are coming up into attorney work, they treat their time differently. And we have to navigate that. So if you're a supervising person and you're like, because I've heard this from supervising attorneys, like, I got people saying they won't work on the weekends. And I'm like, so what happens? And I've heard them say, well, I end up just doing it. And I'm like, okay, you need to come to that person. How are you contributing to this? They're not going to do the work because you're doing it. So what are different ways, and maybe it's not working on the weekend, but what are different ways you can share your expectations and get some buy-in from that person who's coming up to actually do and get the work done. So choice and um, a choice is something that can help you. And I'm going to answer. One person is giving some advice. Best advice I ever received when I was about 22 is learn how to say no nicely, of course. I mean, you also hear like no is a complete sentence. And that can be true for many of us. It's like really hard to just say no, but it is important to learn to say no. Or if you're in a situation where you're being asked something of someone who supervises you and you're maybe like, I don't know if I can say no, but I don't have time right now, to start communicating that like, hey, I do want to help you on the brief. I actually am working on these other things. You asked for it by tomorrow. I could do it. Is it possible I could get it to you by Friday or by Tuesday or whatever it might be? So thank you. And Anonymous has learned how to say no nicely, of course. And then Lisa's asking, how is the I get to choose to mentality different from toxic positivity? That's a great question. So I'm going to give my definition of toxic positivity. So Lisa, you can determine if we're apples to apples here. Toxic positivity is when like, to me, if I communicate to someone, I'm really struggling right now, and they say something like, chin up, it'll be better. It's all going to work out okay, or it'll get better tomorrow. Or we're telling ourselves, like, I can handle this, I can handle everything. We might hear some of the negative self talk of like, oh, I shouldn't feel so exhausted. I shouldn't feel so overwhelmed right now. And so, what I would say the difference between what I'm suggesting, which is I choose to versus toxic positivity, is really being aware of what you are choosing. And it might be something simple as saying is, I choose to be really angry at the situation that's unfolding at work or in my home right now. I'm choosing to be angry. And I'm going to sit with that for a minute. So it doesn't necessarily have to be, I choose to file that brief on time. That's not what I mean. But when you're noticing, like, I choose this because it's important to me, that is not necessarily saying, I don't want you to tack on, therefore I should feel better about it. That to me would be the toxic positivity. But just getting in alignment with why you are choosing it. Not so much, and if I say this, I will feel better. But when we start to notice what we're choosing and why, oh, I choose to work every single weekend because I'm afraid to have a conversation with my boss, or because I want to make partner and that's what's required. It doesn't mean I'm happy about it, but it might help me feel empowered of like, and that's why I'm doing this. And I talk with a lot of really high achieving folks who are able to say, actually, I'm choosing to work 80 hours a week because I'm working towards something. And it helps me let go of some of the anger or frustration. So that's what I would say the distinction I'm making is I'm not suggesting that you say I choose to or get to, and therefore I feel better and happy about it, but I choose to or get to, and therefore I'm just more aware of what I'm choosing and why. Great. Thank you. So now let's look at, I want you to take a moment of where you're focusing on your circumstances versus choice, and what could you choose to focus on instead. And Lisa, who just asked that question, it sounds like there's some maybe rich soil there for you to think about, okay, what's the difference between what I'm choosing and I don't want to force myself to be happy about it. And then what could you choose to focus on? Like, what are the choices you are actually making? And again, I'm not saying you run the whole law firm so that your partner's not going to ever come back to you and demand you, or that the partner won't come back and say, no, you do need to get it done today. But I am going to say the more you say, I'm going to choose to do what the partner asked me because my job is important to me, it can just sort of help alleviate a little bit of the disempowered feeling. Let's end on eliminating some distractions. Solution number 3. What are you willing to change, trade, or give up? I don't operate from the coaching perspective in the I have to give up something in order to do this, but I do operate from the coaching perspective that we live in reality. And in order to grow, in order to achieve the next level, there are things we may need to trade off or change or potentially let go of, right? But coming at that from a place of choice. So that's why I want to talk about solution number 3, eliminating distractions. In our busy law practices, there are so many distractions. And again, I'm curious, you could, if you want to raise your virtual hand to share, how many of you work from home or in some sort of a hybrid situation where part of what the distraction is the people in our home with us, right? So, right, we're working in a hybrid, and lots of times our external distraction is either the people that are around us at home or our colleagues, right? I love this. I don't know if the Zoom cuts out. I'm knocking on something. Knock, knock, knock. Hey, do you have a second? I mean, if an attorney is asking you if you have a second, you please have to know it's not 1 second. And so there's lots of different ways we are distracted. Notifications is a huge way that we're distracted. Email, there's so much with Zoom chat and Slack and Teams. We're like bloop bloop. When I remember we used to use Skype back in the olden days when we used Skype 10 years ago. We used the chat on that. And so suddenly you're getting all of these notifications. So one thing I encourage you to do is turn off all the notifications that you're able to turn off, including your emails. The reason why is this. We sort of believe that we're multitasking and that's helpful, but when our brain gets interrupted, it can take us another 7 seconds to refocus on what we were getting back to. Like it takes 7 seconds. So if it's one distraction, no big deal. But if you're trying to get the statement of facts written in your brief and every few seconds and emails popping up, even just looking at the notification can distract you. So coming up with a system, whether it's your social media notifications, your chat notifications, or your email notifications, coming up with a system that works for you and the demands of your law practice, it's pretty liberating to not check your email every 18 seconds. And in most law practices, you can come up with a system that will work for you and the organization you're working for, where you can maybe you check your email at the top of every hour. I know some folks, depending, that have a practice where they will say, I'm checking email, at 9 a.m. and noon and at 3 p.m. If you're a leader in your practice, communicating that to your team. So turning off your notifications, learning to say not right now to that, hey, do you have a second? Not right now. Schedule something with my assistant, or not right now, can it wait? Not right now, could we talk about it in an hour? The other thing that you can use is your do not disturb or out of office. And I don't want you to abuse this because then it becomes meaningless. But if you are actually working on, I don't know why, if we're in court or in a mediation or in a client meeting, we're so willing to be like, I'm going to value that time and not check my email. But when it's something important for just me, I don't value that time and I end up getting distracted and checking emails or responding to things. So using your out of office or your do not disturb in a way that supports you. And that might be, we get them all, I get them like, oh, my schedule is impacted this afternoon, so I may not be getting back to you. I'm not checking emails, or I'm out of the office this afternoon. You can also use that out of office in a new way, which is to communicate to the people around you that you might, hey, people on my team, I'm going to, shut down email and chat for the next 2 hours because this brief is due next week and I want to work on getting it done so I can get the rough draft out. Hey, family or roommates that are around me when I'm working from home, I'm shutting my door because I can't be disturbed. Right now, I'm working on something important. So you can use that. And when I say support team, that's what I mean. It might be your family at home. It might be that you have the luxury of an amazing assistant or a paralegal. It might be that it's also informing those who you're reporting up to about what you're working on. Another great way to eliminate distractions is sometimes the distractions are in our head. So taking care of yourself, getting sleep, scheduling breaks, hydrating, those actually help us eliminate some of the fuzziness and the brain fog that can happen when we're really busy. But also we can use a timer or keep a notepad nearby. So let's say, and actually I just did this yesterday. I was in the middle of a meeting and I remembered, oh, I have to book pet sitting. And I thought it and I just wrote it down on my to-do list so that I didn't forget it. That way it's out of my mind. If you're someone who wakes up in the middle of the night with a million things running through your head, keep something nearby to write it down. And then you can, it usually helps to set it aside. Again, you need to figure out what works for you. The other thing is using a timer. I like a timer either when I know I'm going to get really engrossed in a project and I could work on it for 6 hours, but really I only have an hour and a half today. I'm only going to dedicate an hour and a half. I might use a timer to stop me. I also love a timer to do the things I don't want to do. Some of you might have heard the phrase eat the frog, like do the thing you don't want to do first thing in the day so you just get it out of the way. But you can also use a timer. Like you may not want to work. The reason you're not in the important but not urgent is because you don't want to write the darn brief or finish the contract or writing the estate plan. Like, ugh, I just don't feel like it. You can use a timer to say, you know what? I'm going to just work on this thing for 10 minutes, 15 minutes, an hour. I'm going to set the timer. And when that timer goes off, I'm going to put it away. So that's another way that I like to eliminate distractions because I know if I have told myself I'm only going to do this thing for 30 minutes, I can focus on it for 30 minutes instead of being like, I'm going to work on this thing. But did anyone comment on my LinkedIn post? Did anyone like the photos I posted of our holiday party? Right? Those are the sorts of distractions that come up when we don't want to do things. So you can also use a timer for that. And I do want you to think about, whoops, what are some distractions that are happening for you throughout your day and what tools might help you eliminate that distraction? So is it interruptions from others? Is it notifications? Is it your brain is going a million miles an hour and so you keep thinking of other things? Is it that you don't want to do the thing and so rather than doing it, I don't know, you've cleaned your entire office first, right? That's when I know I really don't want to do something. I'm like, before I do this, I better organize my bookshelf. Right? And so we can eliminate that distraction. So what distractions happen most for you? And what is a tool you think you would help you eliminate that distraction? In our last few minutes, let's bring this all together. Look, y'all, we don't plan to fail. Most of us don't wake up in the morning going, I hope today is full of urgencies that I don't want to deal with and that I've dropped the ball on. And I'm just going to really suck it up today. Like, ugh. Most people don't operate in that way. We don't plan to fail, but people do fail to plan. So, by identifying and making time for your big rocks, it helps you ensure that you've got something in place so that you do those things that really matter to you, right? And that's a way of planning and you find the way that works best for you. I also really liked 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's another, you can look at self-help or leadership or business growth books like that to help you bring it all together and create a plan that works for you. If you're not a morning routine person, then don't be mad at yourself for not having a morning routine. Figure out what does work for you. It really works for me to work out at lunch every day. Great. Then build that into your schedule. When you're empowered by choice, you're more likely to make intentional decisions and to feel less stress, frustration, or anger about your situation, which we talked about at length before. By saying, I choose to or I get to, it doesn't mean you're full of happiness and the demands go away. It hopefully means, though, that you're at least in alignment with what's important to you and why it's important. And oftentimes it helps us see there is a light at the end of this tunnel. I'm actually not going to stay in this job forever. I am working here now to pay off my law school debt, and I am going to change at some point, and I'm excited. Or I really do want to make partners, so I'm putting in the time and effort to do that now. Eliminating distractions can help you stay focused, get rid of some of that brain fog, and also to set healthy boundaries for communication, projects, and downtime. So, how will you be well as an attorney? Remember, wellness is an active process through which you become aware of and make choices toward a more successful existence. And who doesn't want that? I encourage you today to pick one of the strategies I shared with you and start implementing it. If you need to, get an accountability partner, tell your colleague, your best friend, someone you work with, your partner, that, hey, I'm going to start using a timer. Check in with me in a week and see how it went. I'm going to check in with you and see how it went. Come and work with me. Go see a therapist if you need some emotional release. Talk with your colleagues and your family and your friends. I really thank you for spending this hour with me. please feel free at any time to email me directly. You have the materials. This QR code also leads you to my website where you can sign up to, it will notify me that you've wanted to get in touch. And I am happy to communicate with you in that way as well. Before I say thank you, there are references included in your materials so that you can look at those. And I really just want to thank you so much for being here today. Let me check this Q&A. Thank you. Diana says thank you. You're welcome. Thanks for spending your hour with me, and go out and have good energy.
Thank you so much, Meg, for this phenomenal class. It was so great, and just the amazing tools that you shared and the thought-provoking questions. So thank you so, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me today. Have a great day, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.